In 1968, America was introduced to a brutal serial killer, who mystified the American public, and the world, with his strange ciphers that he left in his taunting letters to the press. 5 people were killed by the Zodiac, and 2 more barely escaped but scarred for life. The attacks took place between December 1968 and October 1969. Although the carnage spanned less than a year, the moniker Zodiac Killer was cemented into history. On the night of December 20, 1968, in Benicia, California, high school students Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday were on their first date. David borrowed his mother's car for the date, and the couple were eager to attend a Christmas concert at a local high school that night. But the teenagers instead chose to visit a friend before stopping at a nearby restaurant to eat. They then headed out to Lake Herman Road. At about 10:15 p.m., David parked the car in a gravel turnout, which was a well-known lover's lane. Shortly after 11 p.m., their bodies were found by a nearby resident. Using available forensic data, Robert Graysmith, a political cartoonist for the San Francisco Chronicle in 1969, theorized that a man with a .22 caliber semi-automatic pistol sneaked up on the 2 high school students who were parked on the windswept lovers lane. They were shot down as they scrambled in terror. The young couple died in a spray of gunfire. It was an unusually messy crime scene. The Solano County Sheriff's Department investigated the crime, but no leads developed. 22-year-old Darlene Farron was a wife, mother, and a popular waitress at a Vallejo restaurant. On the night of July 4, 1969, she picked up her friend, Michael Mayju, and stopped her Corvair in the parking lot of Blue Rock Springs Park. Michael later told police that another vehicle pulled into the lot around midnight, and then left only to return minutes later. The driver got out of the car, shined a bright light, and fired into the Corvair with a 9mm handgun. Michael was shot in the jaw, shoulder and leg. Darlene was shot several times. At 12:40 p.m., in a call later traced to a gas station payphone, a man rang the Vallejo Police Department and claimed responsibility for the shooting, as well as the murders on Lake Herman Road. According to the police dispatcher, the caller spoke in a low monotonous voice, saying, "I want to report a murder. If you will go 1 mile east on Columbus Parkway, you will find kids in a brown car. They were shot with a 9mm Luger. I also killed those kids last year. Goodbye." Darlene died on arrival at the hospital, but Michael survived. And investigators were unable to identify any viable suspects. On September 27, 1969, college students Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were relaxing along the shore of Lake Berryessa, some 30 miles north of Napa, California. A man appeared holding a gun, and wearing a hooded costume with a white cross circle stitched over the chest. Explaining that he had escaped from a prison and needed money and a car to escape to Mexico, the stranger bound their wrists with pre-cut lengths of plastic clothesline. Without warning, he plunged a large knife into Brian's back 6 times. He then stabbed Cecilia 10 times, as she fought for her life. The man then walked to Brian's car, and used a pen to draw a crossed circle on the door with the dates and locations of the previous attacks, the date September 27, 1969, the time 6:30, and the notation, "by knife." At 7:40 p.m., a man called the Napa Police Department to report a double murder. The caller described Brian's car, directed police to the scene of the crime, and confessed, "I'm the one who did it." Police traced the call to a payphone at a car wash in Napa. Cecilia died 2 days later, but Brian survived. Paul Stein, a 28-year-old student and husband, worked as a cab driver in San Francisco. On October 11, 1969, Stein picked up a fare headed for a destination in the upscale Presidio Heights neighborhood. At the intersection of Washington and Cherry Streets, the passenger shot Stein in the head, and removed a piece of the victim's shirt. The man walked away just before police arrived, but the police radio broadcast mistakenly described the suspect as a black man, and passing officers dismissed a white man resembling the correct description. Fingerprints found on the driver's side of the cab may have belonged to the killer, and a sketch was produced based on descriptions provided by witnesses. The case was considered a routine robbery, until the office of the San Francisco Chronicle received an envelope with a letter from the Zodiac, which began with the words, "I am the murderer of the taxi driver." The envelope also contained a blood-stained piece of Paul Stein's shirt. The Zodiac denied he left fingerprints, and claimed the police sketch was inaccurate because he had worn a disguise. On the night of March 22, 1970, 22-year-old Kathleen Johns packed her infant daughter into a station wagon and left San Bernardino, California to visit her sick mother in Petaluma, in the northern part of the state. Kathleen was also 7 months pregnant with the child of her longtime boyfriend. As she traveled on Highway 132 near Modesto, another vehicle pulled alongside the station wagon, and the driver appeared to signal that Kathleen should pull over. On the side of the road, the driver explained that the back wheel of Kathleen's station wagon was loose, but he promised to fix the problem. Instead, he loosened the lug nuts, and the wheel fell off as soon as Kathleen tried to drive away. The man then offered to drive Kathleen to a gas station, so she climbed into his car. But she soon discovered that he had other plans. She claimed he also made veiled threats to harm her child. Eventually, Kathleen grabbed her daughter and jumped from the car when they stopped at an intersection, hiding in a nearby field. After he searched for Kathleen in vain, he promptly took off. A passing driver took Kathleen to a nearby police station, where she identified the stranger from a police sketch of the Zodiac. Months later, a Zodiac letter mentioned a rather interesting ride with a woman and her baby. 18-year-old Sherry Josephine Bates lived with her father Joseph, and was a student at Riverside City College in Riverside, California. On October 30, 1966, she left a note that read, "Dad, went to the RCC library." The next morning, her Volkswagen Beetle was found abandoned in the library parking lot, and her body was lying nearby between two houses. She had been stabbed several times and her throat was slashed. Police found a men's Timex watch at the crime scene, a print from a military boot and some hairs and dried blood on the victim's hand. Sherry Jo's purse was intact, and an autopsy revealed no evidence of sexual assault. 1 month after the murder, the local newspaper and the police department received typewritten letters titled, "The Confession," from someone who claimed to be the killer. The author wrote, "Miss Bates was stupid. She went to the slaughter like a lamb," and added, "I am not sick. I am insane." In April 1967, the newspaper, the police and Joseph Bates received virtually identical handwritten letters which read, "Bates had to die. There will be more." The notes were signed with a symbol which resembled the letter Z. In 1969, Riverside police contacted investigators in Northern California regarding the similarities between the Zodiac crimes and the murder of Sherry Jo Bates. Sherwood Morrill, then documents examiner for the California Department of Justice, concluded that the Zodiac was responsible for the notes linked to the Bates case. The Riverside connection was later revealed to the public by Paul Avery, reporter for the San Francisco Chronicle. Zodiac then sent a letter to the Los Angeles Times indicating that the killer confirmed the theory that he had killed Bates. The Zodiac wrote, "I do have to give them credit for stumbling across my Riverside activity, but they are only finding the easy ones. There are a hell of a lot more down there." It's still not confirmed whether the Zodiac Killer was truly responsible for Sherry Jo's murder. On August 1, 1969, 3 letters prepared by the killer were received at the Vallejo Times-Herald, the San Francisco Chronicle, and the San Francisco Examiner. The nearly identical letters took credit for the shootings at Lake Herman Road and Blue Rock Springs. The killer demanded they be printed on each paper's front page or he would kill again. Each letter closed with a symbol consisting of a circle with a cross through it, in what would come to be known as the Zodiac Killer symbol. The letters were also each accompanied by one part of a 3-part cipher that he claimed contained his identity. While the Bay Area Police Department, with the support of the FBI, worked feverishly to track down the killer, another letter soon arrived at the San Francisco Examiner. Beginning, "Dear Editor, this is the Zodiac speaking." It also described the murders in detail, and taunted the police for not having been able to crack his code or catch him. Several days later, high school teacher Donald Hardin and his wife Betty were able to solve one of the ciphers. "I like killing people because it is so much fun," it read. "It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest, because man is the most dangerous animal of all." 3 days after the fourth known Zodiac killing, the 1969 murder of taxi driver Paul Stine, the San Francisco Chronicle received a letter claiming the crime. Written in the same erratic print as the Zodiac's previous letters, it gave the details of Stine's murder, and was accompanied by a bloody scrap of Stine's shirt. At the end of the letter, the killer mused that he would next shoot out the tire of a school bus, and quote, "pick off the kiddies as they come bouncing out." There have been many more letters and cards that were sent to authorities between 1969 and 1970. Some of these letters were signed off at the bottom with his signature crosshair-like symbol, and he seemed to keep a score, as if he were playing a game with the SFPD. For nearly 5 decades, police and amateur sleuths have sought the identity of the Zodiac, and never come close to making an arrest. The serial killer who murdered at least 5 people, taunted police, and terrorized Bay Area residents in the 1960s and 1970s, apparently vanished without a trace. Yet he left behind a mystery that still grips the public imagination, spawning books, movies, TV crime shows, websites, and a trail of tangled theories. Over the years, Zodiac buffs have suggested dozens of possible suspects based on speculation and circumstantial evidence. Conspiracy theorists have pointed at Unabomber Ted Kaczynski, Wichita's BTK killer, or members of the Charles Manson family. A handful of publicity seekers even claim their fathers were the Zodiac. In recent years, absurd allegations have spread on social media, including that Texas Senator Ted Cruz was the Zodiac, even though he was born 2 years after the first confirmed killings. There have, however, been some possible suspects that were investigated. Here are 3 who have drawn the most interest by authorities and the press. Suspect number 1, Ross Sullivan became a person of interest through the possible link between the Zodiac Killer and the murder of Sherry Jo Bates in Riverside. Sullivan was a library assistant at Riverside City College and was suspected by colleagues who said that he went missing for several days after the murder. Sullivan resembled sketches of the Zodiac and wore military-style boots like the footprints found at the Lake Berryessa crime scene. Sullivan was hospitalized multiple times for bipolar disorder and schizophrenia. He was later ruled out as a suspect due to lack of evidence. Suspect number 2, Robert Ivan Nichols, aka Joseph Newton Chandler III, was a formerly unidentified identity thief who committed suicide in Eastlake, Ohio, in July 2002. After his death, investigators were unable to locate his family and discovered that he had stolen the identity of an 8-year-old boy, who was killed in a car crash in Texas in 1945. The lengths to which Nichols went to hide his identity led to speculation that he was a violent fugitive. The U.S. Marshals Service announced his identification at a press conference in Cleveland on June 21, 2018. Some internet sleuths suggested that he might have been the Zodiac Killer, as he resembled police sketches of the Zodiac and had lived in California, where the Zodiac operated. Suspect number 3, Arthur Lee Allen, portrayed as the prime suspect in Robert Graysmith's books, one of which was the basis of the 2007 movie by David Fincher, Zodiac. Allen was questioned by police in 1969 and again in 1971, after a friend told authorities Allen had talked about wanting to kill people and secure a flashlight to a firearm, as the Zodiac did. Allen wore a Zodiac brand watch, owned the same caliber gun used in one Zodiac shooting, and told police the bloody knives in his car were used for killing chickens. Police investigated Allen again in 1991, after an informant facing armed robbery charges said Allen had boasted to him about killing a cab driver. At that point, Michael Mayhew, who survived the Vallejo attack, identified a photo of Allen as the shooter. Of course, he was ruled out as a suspect because Allen didn't match witness descriptions of the Zodiac, and DNA testing also proved that he wasn't the killer. In April 2004, the SFPD marked the case inactive, citing caseload pressure and resource demands, effectively closing the case. However, they reopened their case sometime before March 2007. The case is open in Napa County and in the city of Riverside. Decades have passed since his murder spree, and the case still has thousands of potential suspects. All police departments have limited resources, both in terms of manpower and money, that can be allocated to forensic research. Plus, the somewhat careless way in which genetic materials were handled before the evolution of DNA technology does not help the investigators move forward. However, the Zodiac enthusiasts remain convinced that the killer is not only alive but that he can still be brought to justice. The Zodiac Killer may be one of the scariest murderers in America's history, but he's far from the only one. If learning about unsolved murders and bloodthirsty killers sounds like your idea of a fun night, check out our other videos. Thank you for watching, and we hope you found our video interesting. Like, comment and subscribe for more fascinating unsolved mysteries.